Imagine falling so deeply in love that you decide to change your entire identity just to be with the person you love. Now imagine that dream being ripped away. And instead of walking away, you choose revenge. In January 1892, the quiet streets of Memphis, Tennessee witnessed one of the most shocking crimes in American history. A young woman from a respected family hid outside a house with a straight razor concealed beneath her clothing. Minutes later, another young woman lay dying in the street, while horrified witnesses struggled to understand what had just happened. But this wasn't simply another murder. Hidden behind the headlines was a secret romance, hundreds of love letters, an impossible plan to live together as husband and wife, and a courtroom battle that forced Victorian America to confront ideas it had never openly discussed before. Was Alice Mitchell a cold-blooded killer? Was she mentally ill? Or was she a young woman destroyed by a society that refused to accept who she was? Today, we're uncovering one of the most heartbreaking and controversial true crime cases of the 19th century, the tragic story of Alice Mitchell. Before we begin, remember that this case happened more than 130 years ago. Many newspaper reports from that era were sensationalized, and medical opinions reflected the beliefs of the 19th century rather than modern psychology. Historians have reconstructed the story using court records, surviving letters, and contemporary reports, but some details remain debated. With that said, let's go back to Memphis in the late 1800s. The year was 1892. America was changing rapidly. Railroads connected distant cities, electricity was beginning to transform urban life, and industries were booming. But despite this progress, society remained deeply conservative. Women were expected to marry men, raise children, and devote themselves to family life. Their freedom was limited, and their futures were often decided by social expectations rather than personal choice. Anything outside these expectations was considered improper or even dangerous. It was in this world that Alice Mitchell grew up. Alice came from a respected and financially comfortable family in Memphis. She was intelligent, athletic, energetic, and known for having a strong personality. Unlike many girls of her time, Alice enjoyed horseback riding and outdoor activities. Friends described her as confident and determined. Some also noticed that she preferred activities that society then considered masculine. There was nothing criminal about Alice's life. In fact, she appeared to have a bright future ahead of her. Then she met Freda Ward. Freda was everything Victorian society admired in a young woman. She was graceful, attractive, well-mannered, and came from another respected Memphis family. The two teenagers quickly became inseparable. They spent countless hours together, exchanged gifts, wrote affectionate letters, and made plans for the future. At first, nobody seemed especially concerned. During the Victorian era, close emotional friendships between young women were common. They often exchanged deeply affectionate letters filled with romantic language without automatically being viewed as lovers. But historians believe the relationship between Alice and Freda went much further. Their surviving letters reveal a level of devotion that resembled an engagement. They didn't simply dream about staying friends forever. They dreamed about spending their entire lives together. As their relationship deepened, Alice began imagining an extraordinary future. According to letters later introduced during the investigation, Alice planned to disguise herself as a man. She believed that if she dressed as a man, found work under a male identity, and moved to another city, she and Freda could live together as husband and wife. To modern viewers, the plan might sound impossible, but to Alice, it represented hope. She believed it was the only way they could build the life they wanted. Whether the plan could ever have succeeded is doubtful. But what mattered was that Alice believed in it completely. Unfortunately, secrets rarely stay hidden forever. Eventually, Freda's family discovered the true nature of the relationship. They were horrified. Concerned about their daughter's reputation and future, they demanded that Freda end all contact with Alice. Letters stopped. Visits ended. Meetings became impossible. Exactly how Freda felt during this period remains uncertain. Some historians believe she obeyed her family's wishes despite still caring for Alice. Others believe she had begun distancing herself even before her family intervened. Whatever the truth, Alice experienced the separation as a devastating betrayal. Friends noticed dramatic changes. She became withdrawn, obsessive, moody. Some later recalled that she talked constantly about Freda. Others believed she became increasingly unstable. Whether this was the beginning of a serious mental illness or simply overwhelming emotional distress is something historians still debate. As the weeks passed, Alice became convinced that she could not live without Freda. Instead of accepting the end of the relationship, she began planning something terrible. On the morning of January 25, 1892, Alice armed herself with a straight razor. She learned where Freda would be visiting. Then she waited. Witnesses later described seeing Alice standing quietly outside a friend's home. No one suspected what was about to happen. When Freda finally stepped outside, Alice approached her. Accounts differ on exactly what was said. Some reports claim Alice pleaded with Freda one last time. Others suggest only a few words were exchanged. Whatever happened in those final seconds, it ended suddenly. Alice pulled out the razor and attacked. The blade slashed across Freda's throat. The assault was swift, violent, and horrifying. Freda screamed as blood poured onto the street. Her sister, Lily Ward, rushed forward in an attempt to save her. Alice turned the razor toward Lily, seriously injuring her as well. People nearby immediately ran toward the scene. Several men managed to overpower Alice before she could continue the attack. The violence had lasted only moments, but its consequences would last forever. Freda died shortly afterward from her injuries. She was just 17 years old. News of the murder spread across Memphis almost instantly. Within days, newspapers across America were printing dramatic headlines. Many newspapers focused less on the murder itself and more on the shocking revelation that two young women had apparently shared a romantic relationship. For many Americans, this was the first time they had ever encountered such a story. Some newspapers described Alice as a monster, others portrayed her as hopelessly insane. Still others treated the relationship almost like a bizarre curiosity. The sensational coverage transformed a local murder into a national conversation. Soon, the case reached the courtroom. The prosecution argued that Alice knew exactly what she was doing. She had obtained a weapon. She had waited for Freda. She attacked deliberately. To them, this was clear evidence of premeditated murder. The defense chose a completely different strategy. Instead of denying the killing, they argued that Alice was legally insane. Doctors testified about her emotional instability. Some physicians even claimed that her romantic attraction toward another woman was itself proof of mental illness. Today, modern psychology completely rejects that idea. Sexual orientation is not considered a mental illness. But in the 19th century, many doctors genuinely believed otherwise. This illustrates how dramatically medical understanding has changed over the past century. The trial became one of the earliest American court cases in which same-sex attraction was openly discussed before a jury. Crowds packed the courtroom every day. Newspapers published every detail they could find. People argued passionately about whether Alice was evil, mentally ill, or both. Eventually, the jury reached its decision. Alice Mitchell was declared legally insane. Instead of receiving the death penalty, she was committed to a psychiatric institution. She would never live as a free woman again. Life inside 19th century mental hospitals was often harsh. Patients had few rights. Treatments were primitive. Many spent years isolated from the outside world. Alice remained institutionalized for the rest of her life. Her mental condition reportedly continued to decline. Only 6 years after the murder, in 1898, Alice Mitchell died at just 25 years old. The official cause of death was tuberculosis, although years of institutionalization and poor health almost certainly contributed to her decline. Her story ended behind asylum walls, far from the headlines that had once made her infamous. What we do know is that Freda Ward lost her life. Her family lost a daughter and a sister. Alice lost her freedom, her future, and eventually her own life. Two families were devastated forever. Today, the Alice Mitchell case is remembered not only as a tragic murder but also as an important chapter in the history of criminal law, mental health, gender expectations, and LGBTQ history. It reminds us that history is rarely simple. What do you think? Share your opinion in the comments below, but remember, keep the discussion respectful, because this case involved real people whose lives ended in tragedy. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating true crime mysteries, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We have many more forgotten cases, unsolved mysteries, and shocking historical crimes coming soon. Until next time, stay curious, and remember sometimes the darkest stories are hidden in the pages of history.